Ladies and gentlemen, or should I say, survivors, do you know what happens when the world stops testing your patience and starts testing your soul instead? They didn't just doubt you. They didn't just betray you. No, they designed 12 silent rituals of pain just to see if you would break. And the funny thing is, funny like a bad joke. They were waiting for you to fail, waiting for you to cry, waiting for you to become just another tragic story. But what they found instead was something ungodly, because every betrayal carved your mind sharper, every loss turned your heart colder, and every dark night taught you how to smile in chaos, just like madness itself. Today, I'm not here to tell you a happy story. I'm here to reveal what happens when a human survives all 12 soul trials and comes back not broken, but dangerous. So let me ask you a question. What if the pain you cried about was actually your initiation? They thought pain would be enough to make you quit. They thought pressure would make you confess weakness. They believed that if life hit you hard enough, eventually you would stay down. But what they never understood is that pain doesn't just destroy people. Sometimes it introduces them to who they really are. Pain was not just an accident in your story. It was first silent ritual. The first moment life stopped treating you like a spectator and pulled you into the arena. No warning, no instructions, just impact. At first it felt unfair. Why you? Why so much? Why again and again? While others were laughing, you were learning how to survive storms nobody else could see. While others were sleeping peacefully, your mind was fighting battles at 3 a.m. While others were trusting easily, you were learning what betrayal tastes like. Pain has a strange way of isolating a person. It makes you realize very quickly that not everyone who smiles with you will stand with you. It shows you that some people only love the version of you that is easy to handle. The moment you become difficult, the moment you become heavy with truth, they disappear like smoke. That's when the ritual really begins. Because pain does something dangerous, it removes illusions. It takes off the mask from people. It shows real intentions. It teaches you that words are cheap, but loyalty is expensive. And once you see that reality, you can never go back to innocence again. Every disappointment was like a hammer shaping something inside you. Every rejection was like fire testing your structure. Every moment you wanted to give up, but didn't, was another mark of survival carved into your spirit. Most people run from pain. They numb it. They distract themselves. They pretend it doesn't exist. But you didn't have that luxury. You had to sit with it, feel it, understand it. And slowly you started noticing something strange. It wasn't just hurting you. It was training you. Training your patience when nothing was working. Training your silence when explaining yourself was useless. Training your emotional control when reacting would only make things worse. Training your independence when help never arrived. Pain was turning you into someone who doesn't panic easily anymore. Someone who sees chaos and stays calm. Someone who no longer fears rock bottom because you've already lived there. There comes a moment when pain stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like preparation. You begin to notice that things that once broke you now only irritate you. Situations that once made you cry now only make you observe. The same fire that once burned you is now something you can walk through. And that's terrifying to people, because a person who has been through real pain becomes unpredictable. They are harder to manipulate, harder to scare, harder to control. They start valuing peace more than approval, truth more than popularity, respect more than attention. Pain also teaches a brutal lesson: nobody is coming to save you. And once you truly accept that, something powerful happens. You stop waiting. You stop begging. You stop explaining your worth. You start building yourself quietly. That is when the ritual marks you. You become someone who can sit alone without feeling empty. Someone who can lose people without losing themselves. Someone who can walk through darkness without needing constant reassurance. Pain forces emotional evolution. It kills the naive version of you and replaces it with awareness. It teaches you to read energy instead of words. It teaches you to trust patterns instead of promises. And maybe the darkest part of this ritual is this. You start understanding why strong people often look cold. It's not because they don't feel. It's because they have felt too much. Pain was the first ritual, because it asks one question: will you break? Or will you become something they didn't expect? And every time you stood back up silently, every time you kept going without applause, every time you chose growth instead of revenge, you were answering that ritual. Betrayal never arrives looking like an enemy. It always comes dressed like trust, like friendship, like loyalty, like love. That's what makes it such a powerful test. Nobody prepares you for the moment you realize the person you defended is the one who damaged you. Nobody teaches you how to process the silence after discovering someone you trusted was only pretending. It hits differently because it doesn't just hurt your heart, it questions your judgment. You start asking dangerous questions inside your own mind. Was any of it real? Did they ever care? How did I not see it? That's the true brutality of betrayal. It doesn't just break trust in others. It tries to break trust in yourself. At first, there is shock. Your mind refuses to accept it. You replay conversations. You search for signs you missed. You try to justify their behavior because accepting the truth feels heavier than the lie. But truth has a cruel patience. It keeps showing evidence until denial becomes impossible. And then comes the anger. Not just because they hurt you, but because you were genuine. You were real. You showed loyalty in a world where loyalty is rare. You protected people who would not have protected you. That realization feels like a personal insult to your character. But betrayal is not just cruelty. It is exposure. It exposes who was acting. It exposes hidden jealousy. It exposes who was comfortable while you were struggling. It shows who was secretly competing while pretending to support. It reveals who was gathering your weaknesses while smiling in your face. And the darkest realization comes quietly. Some people weren't in your life to support your growth. They were there to measure your limits. Betrayal teaches observation. After it happens, you stop listening only to words. You start noticing actions, consistency, energy, timing. You begin to understand that some apologies are only strategies. Some kindness is only temporary. Some connections are only convenience. It also teaches emotional discipline. Before betrayal, you may have given your trust easily. After betrayal, access to you becomes earned. Not everyone gets to know your plans anymore. Not everyone gets to know your pain anymore. Not everyone gets to know the real you anymore. This is where people often misunderstand the transformation. They say you changed. They say you became distant. They say you became colder. What they don't understand is, betrayal forced you to upgrade your boundaries. You stopped over-explaining. You stopped over-giving. You stopped ignoring red flags just to keep peace. Because peace built on self-disrespect is not peace. It is slow destruction. Betrayal also destroys the illusion that history guarantees loyalty. Just because someone has known you for years doesn't mean they value you. Just because someone shared good times doesn't mean they will stand in bad times. Sometimes strangers show more honesty than familiar faces, and once you understand that, your circle becomes smaller but real. Your trust becomes rare but strong. Your presence becomes valuable because it is no longer free. There is also a silent strength that betrayal creates. You become less desperate for validation. You realize people's opinions change quickly, but your self-respect must stay permanent. You stop trying to convince everyone of your intentions. You let actions speak and time reveal truth. Another harsh lesson betrayal teaches is emotional independence. You realize attachment without awareness is dangerous. Caring without limits is dangerous. Being available for everyone is dangerous. So you start protecting your energy like it matters, because now you know it does. And maybe the most uncomfortable truth is this: betrayal was not just testing their character. It was testing yours. Would you become bitter or wiser? Would you become cruel or controlled? Would you repeat the same behavior or evolve beyond it? Because pain can make people revengeful, but betrayal gives you the choice to become intelligent instead. It sharpens your instincts. It strengthens your silence. It teaches you that not every battle needs a reaction. Sometimes the strongest move is distance. You learn that closure doesn't always come from explanations. Sometimes closure comes from understanding that their actions already explained everything. And slowly, something powerful forms inside you. The ability to walk away without drama. The ability to detach without hatred. The ability to remember without reopening the wound. That is when betrayal stops being just a wound and becomes a qualification. Loneliness is a different kind of test. It doesn't attack you loudly like pain or shock you like betrayal. It moves quietly, slowly, like a shadow that follows you even in a crowded room. There comes a point where you start noticing that even when people are around, you still feel alone. Conversations become surface level. Smiles become automatic. You begin to realize that being surrounded by people and being understood are two completely different things. This is where most people panic. They rush to fill the silence. They chase distractions. They accept fake connections just to avoid facing themselves. Because real loneliness is not about being physically alone. It's about being left alone with your own thoughts. And that is where the transformation chamber begins. Because when there is nobody left to distract you, you are forced to meet the real version of yourself. No performance, no filters, no pretending. Just you and your mind. At first, it feels uncomfortable. Your thoughts become louder. Old memories resurface. Regrets show up. Questions you avoided start demanding answers. You start remembering moments you gave too much, trusted too fast, stayed too long. Loneliness forces reflection whether you want it or not. It shows you your emotional patterns. It shows you where you tolerated disrespect. It shows you where you abandoned yourself just to keep others. That kind of awareness is not comfortable, but it is powerful. Because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Something else starts happening too. You begin to notice how much of your identity was connected to others. Who are you when nobody is watching? Who are you when nobody is praising you? Who are you when nobody needs you? Most people never answer these questions because they never sit in real solitude long enough. But you did. And slowly, something strange begins to happen. The silence that once felt heavy starts feeling peaceful. The absence of noise starts feeling like freedom. You begin to enjoy your own company instead of fearing it. You start doing things without needing approval. You start thinking without needing validation. You start making decisions without needing consensus. This is where independence is born. Loneliness also teaches emotional self-reliance. You learn how to calm your own storms. You learn how to motivate yourself when nobody checks on you. You learn how to heal quietly without announcing your wounds. And perhaps the most powerful lesson, you learn that not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Because when you were at your lowest, you noticed who disappeared. You noticed who only showed up when things were easy. You noticed who only cared when you were useful. That memory changes how you allow people into your life. Your circle stops being about quantity. It becomes about safety, about honesty, about mutual respect, and you become very careful about who gets past your surface. Loneliness also builds mental endurance. When you survive long periods without emotional support, you stop fearing temporary isolation. You stop tolerating toxic company just to avoid being alone. You would rather walk alone in peace than sit in chaos with others. That realization is dangerous to people who rely on controlling you through fear of abandonment. Because now, you know you can survive without them. Another quiet transformation happens in your communication. You stop talking just to be heard. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You become more selective with your words because you understand silence often protects more than speech. You also begin to see through social illusions. You realize how many interactions are based on convenience. How many friendships are based on proximity. How many connections are based on benefit rather than care. And instead of becoming cynical, you become intentional. Your time becomes valuable. Your energy becomes protected. Your attention becomes selective. There is also a deep emotional strength that forms when you cry alone and still wake up functional the next day. When you fight mental battles nobody knows about and still carry responsibilities. When you heal wounds nobody even noticed. That creates a quiet confidence. Not loud, not arrogant, just stable. Because you know what it took to rebuild yourself when nobody was watching. Loneliness stops being your enemy when you realize it was building your emotional immunity, teaching you self-respect, teaching you self-trust, teaching you how to stand without leaning too heavily on anyone. And without realizing it, you become someone who doesn't need constant noise anymore. Someone who can sit in silence without feeling empty. Someone who can be alone without being lonely. Fear is one of the oldest weapons used against the human mind. It doesn't always come from real danger. Sometimes it is planted by opinions. Sometimes by past failures. Sometimes by people who benefit from you doubting yourself. Fear rarely shows itself as a monster. Most of the time it shows up as a whisper. What if you fail? What if they laugh? What if you're not good enough? And slowly that whisper tries to become your internal voice. At first, fear tries to stop your actions. It tells you not to try, not to speak, not to risk, not to change. It convinces you that staying small is safer than becoming visible. Because visibility attracts judgment, and judgment scares most people more than failure itself. If fear is clever, it reminds you of every mistake you've ever made, every embarrassment, every rejection, every time things didn't work. It collects your worst memories and plays them like evidence against your future. And if you listen long enough, fear can make you believe that your past is your permanent limit. But fear is not just an obstacle. It is also a measurement. It measures how much you care. It measures how much you want to grow. It measures whether you will choose comfort or evolution. Because everything meaningful sits on the other side of discomfort. Most people never realize this because they spend their whole life negotiating with fear instead of confronting it. Fear also grows in imagination. The scenarios in your mind are often far worse than reality. Your brain creates disasters that never happen. It creates humiliation that never comes. It creates defeat before the fight even starts. And this is how fear wins without a battle. Because if it can stop you from trying, it never has to prove you incapable. Another brutal truth about fear is that sometimes it comes from people close to you. Not always because they hate you, but because your courage makes them uncomfortable. Your risk reminds them of their hesitation. Your ambition reminds them of their excuses. So they call your dreams unrealistic. They call your plans dangerous. They call your confidence arrogance. Not because you are wrong, but because your bravery exposes their fear. A fear also tests your identity. It asks, are you who you say you are when things are uncertain? Do you believe in yourself when results are not guaranteed? Can you move forward without approval? Because anyone can feel confident when things are easy. Real courage shows up when outcomes are unclear. There is also a hidden transformation inside fear. Every time you do something while afraid, your brain rewrites its limits. Every time you speak despite nervousness, act despite doubt, or continue despite uncertainty, fear loses authority. Not instantly, not completely, but gradually. You begin to notice that fear doesn't disappear before action. It decreases after action. This changes everything. Because now you stop waiting to feel ready. You start moving while feeling unsure. You start understanding that confidence is often the result of action, not the requirement for it. Fear also teaches emotional control. Your heart may race. Your thoughts may doubt. Your instincts may hesitate. But discipline allows movement anyway. That is where mental toughness forms. You become someone who feels fear but does not obey it. And that is rare. Most people either deny their fear or surrender to it. Very few learn to carry it and still move forward. Fear also reveals what matters to you. You don't fear things that are meaningless to you. Fear often protects what you value. The fear of failure often hides the desire to succeed. The fear of rejection often hides the desire to be accepted. The fear of loss often hides the fact that you truly care. Understanding this changes your relationship with fear. Instead of seeing it only as an enemy, you start seeing it as information. Information about where growth is waiting. Information about where courage is required. Information about where your next version is hiding. And maybe the most powerful realization comes quietly. Fear was never just trying to stop you. It was trying to reveal whether you would stop yourself. Survival changes a person in ways that comfort never can. When someone has been through emotional wars, silent battles, mental pressure, and still continues moving, something inside them stops being ordinary. Most people think survival just means staying alive. But real survival means keeping your mind intact when everything tries to break it. Keeping your character when situations try to corrupt it. Keeping your direction when life tries to confuse it. There is a certain look in the eyes of someone who has survived too much. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is calm, observant, calculated. Because they have already seen what chaos looks like. And once you have seen real struggle, small problems stop intimidating you. You begin to notice how things that once stressed you now barely move you. Drama feels childish. Fake competition feels pointless. Attention-seeking feels empty. Because when you've had to fight just to maintain your peace, you stop wasting energy on meaningless noise. Survival also creates emotional discipline. You stop reacting instantly. You start analyzing. You understand that not every attack deserves a response. Not every insult deserves your attention. Not every disagreement deserves your energy. Because you learned the hard way that energy is limited, and wasting it has consequences. There is also a silent confidence that survival builds. Not the loud type that needs validation. Not the type that shows off. But the type that knows exactly what it took to get here. The type that remembers nights nobody saw. The type that remembers losses nobody understood. That kind of confidence doesn't need to announce itself. It shows up in posture, in patience, in decision-making. Another thing survival does is remove your fear of starting over. When you've already lost things and rebuilt, the idea of rebuilding again doesn't scare you the same way. You know you can recover. You know you can adapt. You know you can endure discomfort without collapsing. This makes you dangerous in a world where many people are controlled by fear of loss. Because now threats don't work the same on you. If someone tries to manipulate you by withdrawing support, you know how to stand alone. If someone tries to pressure you with deadlines, you know how to stay calm under pressure. If someone tries to replace you, you know your value doesn't disappear because someone failed to see it. Survival also sharpens your awareness of human behavior. You become good at reading intentions. Not because you want to judge people, but because experience forced you to notice patterns. You notice who only shows up when they need something. You notice who avoids accountability. You notice who respects boundaries and who tests them. These observations become automatic, and that awareness protects you. There is also a deep level of self-respect that forms after survival. You stop tolerating things that your past self might have accepted. Disrespect feels heavier. Dishonesty feels obvious. One-sided effort feels unacceptable. Because once you fight hard to rebuild your peace, you refuse to hand it over cheaply. Survival also changes your relationship with time. You stop rushing meaningless things. You stop chasing temporary approval. You start thinking long-term. You start valuing stability over excitement, growth over popularity, purpose over distraction. People may call you serious. They may call you different. What they don't understand is that struggle forced maturity. And maturity often looks strange in a distracted world. Another powerful shift happens too. You stop needing revenge. Not because you forgot what happened, but because you outgrew the need to prove anything. Your focus moves toward building rather than reacting. Success becomes your response. Peace becomes your statement. Distance becomes your protection. And perhaps the most dangerous thing survival creates is this. You stop needing permission to believe in yourself. You stop waiting for agreement. You stop needing constant encouragement. You stop depending on applause to continue. Your motivation becomes internal instead of external. That is when a person becomes truly difficult to stop. Because now they are not moving because everything is easy. They are moving because they already proved to themselves they can survive what was supposed to destroy them.